Season 3 new patch is on the way, 25.17. We will have the comeback of Doombots. Xinzao will receive a visual update, and we will also have some game info tracking improvements. Basically, Riot wanting to match what other apps used to do with the jungle timers, tracking flash, ignite, whatever, ultimate spells as well. So they're trying to make it easier for the regular player base to track. Champions, let's begin with Gwen. She's going to lose 3 armor. Attack speed growth is going to be increased by 0.25. And this is a really good nerf. Initial slow will be dropped into a scaling theme, so instead of just having 60% all the way from level 6, now we'll have 30% at level 6, 45 at level 11, and you go back to the previous value, to the flat value actually by level 16. Really good change. The subsequent slow, which is the second part of her ultimate onwards, will also be reduced on those levels. Really good because the annoying part and the most obnoxious part of Gwen's kit is usually your ultimate, and the fact that if you get hit once, you cannot really move. So no matter how much movement speed you might have, those 60% cut through a lot. No pun intended, of course. So it's a really good change by Riot, and it should drop Gwen in priority, even though she receives some attack speed. This utility-wise is what usually matters, of course. AP Irelia, so basically a boss buff per se. Gonna be slightly buffed on her AP ratio. Basically, AP Irelia is what usually max first, and E is the second part. You don't really care about the Q damage because it doesn't really scale with AP. So basically, you will one-shot wave still, but I don't think this will change much. This is a buff by level 13, if I'm not mistaken, because you buff this, you max this second, which means the damage is now going to be up into 20% AP. They're missing like the percentage signal here. But yeah, I think it's not going to be viable, but a boss will certainly like this change. Kassadin damage is going to be increased when it comes to percentage values. His AP ratio is going up by 10% on his Q, and also his E up by 5%. Is this enough for Kassadin to be strong, broken as he was before? Of course not. He's still going to be weak. There are some angles where Kassadin can be interesting to be picked. It's a very niche option. But yeah, these are good direction changes from Riot because they're looking to tweak his AP scalings, because his AP ratios are the main problem. Because yeah, initially you just don't really do much, and scaling into 60% AP as before, or 65% AP, doesn't really make you want to play this champion, of course. So shifting the AP ratios is a good step into the right direction, even though it will still remain in the weak zone. Kayn, Q mana cost and W mana cost are going to be lowered, essentially by 20 here and 10 here. Basically a lane buff for Kayn. Jungle doesn't really change much because your jungle clear is already really healthy with your mana pool. So top lane Kayn, once again, Riot seems to really like boss because we are buffing AP Irelia and we are buffing Kayn's laning phase. So yeah, so far so good in that matter. Kog'Maw, AP ratio going to be increased by 10%. Really nice. It's a skill shot, but still a really nice buff. And the W damage is going up by 1% into 1.5% per 100 AP. Perhaps the Nash's Tooth build might help this a bit in this matter, but even if you just go for full artillery and play with your range, it's still going to be a really nice buff, because here you're going to get also plus 5% by level 11 and also plus 10 at level 16. In my opinion, AP Kog'Maw is really broken versus low range type of compositions that don't really have much engage to play with. So if you're playing with very low range opponents, especially in bot side, and if you're able to punish it, I think Kog'Maw was already in a good state. And with these changes, it's going to emphasize his state even more. I think it's kind of a sleeper pick. Most players haven't really figured it out. Some angles where you would play Ziggs, for example, you can play Kog'Maw for sure, because it's really hard to catch him if you don't have engage or flanking tools to actually punish the Kog'Maw. So I would say that yeah, if people catch up to this, it might actually become really broken pick because of these buffs as well on top. Mastery base health is going to be dropped by a little, and on it damage modifier as well, so it's going to drop a bit in win rate. I don't really have much of an opinion, to be fair, but they did change Kraken and Terminus interaction before, so it did kind of buff Mastery in that matter, per se. Plus 2 damage on Misfortune, it seems small, but it's a nice buff, to be fair, for MF, and she has been lurking in the shadows with the current ADC meta, so she disappeared quite a lot, per se. So 2 damage is actually a nice buff. W mana cost on Morgana, they want to make it less costly, and minimum damage is also going to be increased. I do believe the last value is 90 and not 70. I could be mistaken, but maybe they changed it. Either way, I think Morgana is still going to be in a similar spot. I don't think, yes, this might increase her win rate a bit, but do I think she will be viable or more desirable to play? Definitely not, for sure. Nilah, so this will be interesting because a lot of people see this as a Nilah jungle being completely possible. I'm really not sure if it's going to be fully possible. It's a 100% total AD increase. Of course, her clear is going to be quite quicker because of her Q, secondary damage. Still, I don't think it's enough, to be fair. Some people are going to do it in solo queue, whether it's low, medium, or high elo. I don't think she's going to be popular unless you draft a really melee engage type of composition where Nilah can just get full value out of it. But yeah, it might be a step into a direction that Riot might not want to take because Nilah, yeah, yeah, as they mentioned, she will not become a viable jungler, so that's definitely true. Passive from Rumble is going to be decreased by 1%, so it goes from 5% target max HP into 4% target max HP, so this is a 20% damage nerf. You don't usually, in most lanes, unless you're playing versus Ornn Sign, you don't really use your overheat as much. So against the tankier options, yes, you're going to feel this change because it's minus 1% target max HP. So those tanky matchups will be a bit more annoying if you are able to subsequently use your overheated damage. And the Q Flame Spitter is being nerfed. Not in AP ratio, which I'm really surprised, but in flat value by 20 once you reach level 9. So it starts with 5, goes into 10, 15, 20, but the scaling, the 100% AP and the target max HP will be the same. Do we care about this? It's a nerf, for sure. Mainly the passive is the biggest nerf, I would say. I mean, it depends on the matchup because if you play into Ornn or Sign, this is the biggest nerf. If you play into a squishy champion or a champion that is a bruiser, then this is the biggest nerf for sure because you lose 20 damage essentially. So I would say that Rumble will still be OP and competitive. Maybe this will be a longer drop in solo queue for sure, but yeah, Rumble competitive will still be fairly strong despite these two nerfs being hit. Attack speed growth on Senna is going up by 0.6 and their Q is going to give more healing, so more sustain for the Senna. And she will have more attack speeds. So yeah, she's kind of underperforming there, but there are some compositions where she still appears. And yeah, I think it's a fine change. Senna will still be a niche pick regardless. Let me just grab a sip of water. Okay. Bonus monster damage. This is, I mean, I could be mistaken, but I think the Haymaker has like 14 to 16 seconds of cooldown, something similar to that. So I don't think this is a huge change, to be fair. It gives you plus 25 initially and then it 250. So no, I disagree. I don't think Sett jungle will be viable, but as I say, is closer to being viable. But this is not it. I think Sett could return into the meta. Before there was a really broken part of Sett where he appeared in the meta and started being a 5-way flex pick. Do I want Sett to be a 5-way flex pick or 4-way flex pick? No, for sure not. But it would be nice to see Sett appear more often because he's not in a really good state right now. Q duration goes into 2 seconds on his Q, basically his poison, and max damage 6 goes into 8 because it's 2 seconds. So, yeah, small nerf for Singed. Trap opacity, basically it will be easier to see on Teemo. Vayne monster damage, this is quite big for early game because it goes into 140 and into 200 after. damage regardless of health, so this is a buff for early game and a nerf for the later clear. No one cares about later clear because Vayne will get more damage essentially. So this could be quite interesting, mainly in solo queue, to see what people will do with the Vayne jungle because, well, laning phase Vayne is not really playable nowadays. So there might be some really interesting scenarios where people start to actually play Vayne jungle. Mainly in solo queue. Let's begin with seeing it in solo queue in some certain angles against really low range comps and tankier compositions. Could be interesting actually to see it happen. Yunara, as players have gotten better, Yunara has risen to be one of the most important ADCs in the game. That is very true. We've got several bug fixes in the dispatch. Not for popular Kraken Slippers, Hurricane builds. Yeah, just read these, but yeah, I know what they're talking about. It's because of the bounce and stuff like that. So yeah. Total cost damage from Axiom Arc is going to be dropped by 250. This might actually be a viable item for second, third, or fourth slots in some champions. That might justify because before it was potentially one of the worst options in the game. Horizon Focus plus 10 AP, minus 50 gold. This is a nice item. It could justify to be built second or fourth or fifth onwards. But as a second item, you have to compete with Shadow Flame. You have to compete with Sonius. You have to compete with Script Bloom, Bloodletter. There's all those niche mage items that some users will not, skip those options for Horizon Focus when it gives a flat value of AP and ability ace. So even though this is a really good buff for the item, yes, you should still do this in some users, in some champions, but only as a second option in some moments and in some scenarios. And if you can do it, then if you can justify buying it in 5th or 6th, if you can use the ability S in the flat amount of AP while you already have Rabadance, then it does make sense, okay? But there's so much competition in the niche that, yeah, even though this is a nice buff, Horizon Focus might appear more often, but it might still be competed with the options I've just told you. Profane Hydra, minus 5 AD, but it will have minus 350 gold cost. Makes it a lot more achievable. The first champion that comes into my mind is obviously Kiana, Talon, also Quinn, for example, laning phase Quinn, another buff for boss, by the way, because of the Quinn. So yeah, this is a buff into that direction. It's a lot cheaper, and even though you lose 5 AD, the main thing is you can shift from your first item into the second and third one with lethality a lot quicker. So this is a huge quality of life buff, despite losing 5 AD. And then we have some arena and the ARAM changes, but we don't care about those, so let's make a really quick and usual TLDR of the patch. Xinsao visual update, Doom bots, and jungle timers and spell tracking. Gwen, it's a huge nerf, mainly because of her utility. Basically, her R will have scaling slow, so it's a nice nerf from Riot. AP Irelia will not be played, but boss will most likely try this out. Not a big deal. Kassadin, a buff into the right direction, but he needs more buffs. It will still remain weak and a niche pick as always, but it's a buff into the right direction. A buff for boss, once again, Kayn mana cost is being decreased and doesn't really change nothing for jungle, only top lane Kayn. Q from Kog'Maw, W and R are being buffed for the AP iteration. I do still believe that Kog'Maw is in a good spot for artillery when you're playing versus low engage, non-flanking and low range compositions. So with this on top, it will be even stronger. Mastery, I'm not really sure, but he was buffed because of Kraken Slayer and Terminus interaction in the previous patch. Misfortune, nice buff, but she's still really low popularity because of the rising picks that I've shown. So yeah, Morgana, I don't think this will matter, even though it's another buff that they're trying to give so that she can show more often. Nilah, this will not be enough for her to be viable in the jungle, but yeah, secondary damage to monsters will make her clear better when it shifts to mid-game, late-game transition. So yeah, but she will not be a viable jungler, but some people will try this out in solo queue for sure. Rumble, against Orange Sign, the passive is the biggest nerf, of course, because you lose 1% Argon max HP when you're overheated, and the damage is going to be loosened in the flat amount, but AP ratio is going to be untouched. Solo queue Rumble will be more affected, competitive Rumble will stay pretty much and most likely the same, to be fair, and still OP. Senna, little nice buff, attack speed growth, and more healing, which gives her more sustain. So yeah, good there. Sett, this is not enough for him to become a jungler because and the 4-way flex pick as before because yeah, this is an ability that has a lot of cooldown, so you use it. Yeah, it's not really that big of a deal. Singe also a small nerf. Teemo, quality of light changed because you can see the shrooms easier. Vayne might be a possibility to low range and tankier compositions where she can show since her laning phase is unplayable in bot side. Yunara, some quality, some bug fixes actually, I'm sorry, because of her interaction with the bounces with Kraken and also Runan's Hurricane. Axiom Arc will have a nice buff. Horizon Focus, as I've mentioned before, if in case you've seen the video, are competition items for second Bloodletter, Crypt Bloom, Zonius. All of those items will still compete, also Shadow Flame, with Horizon Focus, so this is a better item for sure. But there's a lot of competition, so in some scenarios you can buy this item, and you should buy this item, especially for ability as enthusiasts that can get a lot of raw AP amount in this. Either way, there's a lot of competition, so Horizon Focus is not like the top priority and only priority for sure. Profane Hydra, really good buff for Kiana, Talon, and Gwen for the laning phase as well. Another boss buff, so I would say this is a 25.17 point boss patch per se, because these are a lot of buffs for boss. And yeah, this is it for the new season, season 3, patch 25.17. And see you guys in the next one. I will pack my stuff to go into Stockholm. Hope you guys will follow the NLC finals in case you'll be there. Come have a chat as well, and thank you for listening once again. See you in 2 weeks.